Warm greetings, everyone. On behalf of W4W Foundation, a think tank instituted as Citizens Collective, we welcome you to another session of Wednesdays for Water. The conversation today we are having is on the water anxiety series, a series which we are starting today. And today we are going to talk about hydropower projects and flood disasters in the Himalayan Basin. Before we get into the session, actually, I would like to take you through what W4W does and briefly on what Wednesdays for Water is for us. The objective of Wednesdays for Water is to engage in conversation with water experts, grassroots practitioners, policymakers, and importantly, youth to explore the complex intertwined issues associated with water and the possible solutions they are seeking and working on. The Wednesdays for Water is our signature series, and as you must have seen in the number that it is 175 sessions, 75th session we are holding today. But importantly, along with it, we have also extended, because of the success of Wednesdays for Water, we also do Friday Waters, which includes Water Talkies, Water Thesis Club, Water Reading Club, where we invite authors, Water Arts, where artists come and share the alternate ways they are studying and working on the water matters. Besides, on Monday, we do Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water, where we acknowledge and appreciate the work women are doing in the water sector. These are all online sessions, but let me also assure you that equally in the numbers, we are also organizing water workshops, water walks and talks, seminars, special courses, and conference panels to continue the water conversation in various possible ways. At W4W, we have just one mission, that is, let the conversation flow, and water conversation is extremely crucial for water conservation. My name is Mansee Bal Bhargava from the House of W4W. I welcome you all, and also I would like to share my deep gratitude to all our previous speakers, actually counting more than 600 so far, and to nearly 380 sessions we have conducted, to all my team members, to really inching towards 400 sessions, which we hope to reach actually before the end of the year. Now, coming to today's session, I don't think anyone is unaware in this country on the kind of disasters we are facing at this moment in time due to the heavy monsoon across, whether it is urban, it is rural, it is even, by the way, desert area, or it is in the Himalayan ranges or the coastal areas. So it has somehow become part of our life. Now we have to discuss it in a series, which is what we are trying to work on as Water Anxiety series, looking at the kind of disasters, displacements, and the distress it brings to people, and also to the management who actually is taking up the disaster relief projects. So today we are actually inaugurating that Water Anxiety series supported by WforW, which is an NGO, new NGO set up in the United Kingdom. And for today's session on hydropower projects and flood disasters in the Himalayan Basin, we have Professor Vimal Khawas and as a speaker, and Dr. Rinan Shah and Ayush Joshi as discussants. Thank you so much, Vimal, Rinan, and Ayush for agreeing to do this session. It is very important for us that we start this conversation. And today I know we may not touch everything, but at least to get started on this important conversation series. And before I invite all of you, I would also like to have a brief introduction of each one of them when they are speaking. So we will start with our speaker of the day, Professor Vimal Khawas, who serves as a professor at the Special Center for the Study of Northeast India at Jawaharlal Nehru University, our very own JNU at Delhi. And he has held this position since July 23rd. And prior to this, he was an associate professor and assistant professor at the Sikkim University, where he played a pivotal role in teaching, research, and institution building over a span of 16 years. His research expertise lies at the intersection of environmental security, water resource management, climate change, adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and regional development, with a particular focus on Himalayan region. So actually in Indian map, we are starting from the north of the country. So that's a good way to start a series as well. And I also came to know that he is my immediate senior at CEP. So welcome, Vimal, and the floor is yours to make your presentation. And then I'm going to invite both our discussants one by one when I also give their introduction. Thank you so much, Vimal, for taking out time. I know I have been after you for more than a year. So finally, I have you. Over to you, Vimal, and the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. Uh, okay. Is it okay?
Yes, it's visible. Please, yes.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
One second. I'm just. Okay. Thank you so much. Uh, One second. I'm having little trouble. Are you seeing the screen?
Yes, I'm seeing the screen and it
Okay.
moved to the second slide, but we don't see the content.
Okay. Okay. That is what. One sec. One sec. Hmm. क्या कर दिया मैंने? Let me.
Do you want me to play?
No.
Okay,
Let me
fine.
try. I'm just.
I think I will also request you to put your laptop on back power. I see 42%.
Somehow it has hanged.
Yeah.
Stops. I'm sharing again, huh?
Okay, take your time. Yes, it's moving now.
Okay, now it's there, huh?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam Manasi, for having me, for inviting me, and giving me opportunity to be part of this very important session. I also am very grateful to my two discussant, Dr. Renan and Mr. Ayush. Uh, this is the topic given to me by the organizers. I'm not seeing the title. Yeah. Okay. It's hydropower project and flood disasters in the Himalayan Basin. So I'll start. Uh, sorry. It's again.
Is your slide not moving or what? Yeah.
Once. Okay. So this is the geographical location of the Himalaya, what we call the sensu stricto uh, definition of the Himalaya. It is a very important geological unit, one of the youngest fold mountains of the world, as most of us know, and it extends from, if we see its extension, it extends from the Indus Trench in the west to Brahmaputra Gorge below Namche Barwa in the east, and it has a west to east distance of about 2,500 kilometer and has a width of 200 to 300 kilometer. Now, since our talk is on the vulnerabilities towards a disaster, I think it's important for us to very briefly look into what are the environmental insecurities that feature the Himalaya. You know, there are two very important pointers here. The first is, Himalaya as a young fold mountains are susceptible geologically. It has a geological characteristics and it also has a geomorphic characteristics. So these two very important features make Himalaya a very fragile geographical unit, which are which is vulnerable to many geomorphic processes. So Himalaya, at its first glance itself, is overwhelmed with these natural processes. And to make these characteristics of the Himalaya worsen, more recently, anthropogenic or human activities have been, aggravating the natural state of affairs, which inflicted by the physical forces. And further, in recent times, we have been talking about climate change. Climate change, which again has been contributed to a large extent by human activities, have become another set of challenges that are repeatedly, triggering issues in the Himalayas. This is This is a very important picture sent to me by my friend who is currently based in Ladakh. This picture was sent to me about an year ago, and you'll see there is an AC fitted in a building in Ladakh. And Ladakh traditionally is known as cold desert, and which this is a very clear, indicator that Himalaya has warmed so fast. So we don't have to even talk about climate change. The climate change has already happened. We are only seeing the impacts of climate change now. So these are the three very important pointers that I think we need to keep in mind when we discuss the issues of disaster in the Himalaya. Now, since our topic is on hydro and its link with disaster today, let us very briefly look into the general hydro potential in the Himalaya. You know, Himalaya, as we all know, is, is a critical source of hydropower. This is primarily driven by three very important factors. The first is a very high precipitation, snowmelt, and its steep gradients. High precipitation, we don't need data because there are whole lots of data across different sources. And Himalaya is often also called, the water tower of South Asia. Snowmelt, Himalaya already is known globally as the third pole, and steep gradient Himalaya is known for the abrupt and steep gradient. So these are the three factors which makes Himalaya a very very critical source of hydropower resource. And if you look into further details of the Himalaya, if you look into the Hindu Kush Himalaya spanning across different countries, this particular geological unit supports about 10 major river systems in the world with substantial hydropower potential. And there are various estimates that talks about its potential. And one of the estimates suggests that the theoretical potential, hydro potential of the Himalaya is 5 lakh megawatt across the region. And India, out of this 5 lakh, India has an exploitable potential of 150 lakh megawatt at 60% load factor, which can be calculated at around 30% of the total potential hydropower in the region, which is a substantial amount. And globally as well as nationally, we see this potential of hydro potential of Himalaya as a clean energy source, and which can be used for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and meeting Sustainable Development Goal 7, which talks about affordable and clean energy. Although this is what we see from Delhi or from the globe, from around the globe, but when it comes to local level, there are so many issues when we talk about hydro at the ground level, which we will talk as we proceed ahead. Now, although it has so much of potential, on the ground, we have not been able to tap this hydro potential. And as of now, we have only tapped about 30% of the hydro potential, and 70% of the hydro potential of the Indian Himalaya is still untapped. This is so because there are so many challenges that we have just talked about. It is geologically very unstable, geomorphologically very unstable. There are so many geomorphic processes that has been operating in the Himalaya, in the form of mass wastings like flash floods, landslides, avalanches. There work of rivers has been going on, work of wind has been going on, work of glaciers have been going on. So Himalaya has been inherently very unstable because of its own geological and geomorphic characteristics, and that has proved to be a very important challenge for us to exploit hydro resources in the Indian Himalaya. Secondly, recent climate changes has also intensified these processes and made the already active geomorphic processes further aggravate, creating so much of problem to us in the form of extreme weather events, in the form of flash floods, glacial lake outburst floods, so on and so forth. Besides that, when we talk about hydropower project, we are also talking about deforestation, because hydropower is a big structure. So we have to deforest. There is habitat destruction, there is species loss, there is displacement, and this big hydropower complicates all these things, and because of these complications, establishing and building big hydropower projects has been a major problem in the Himalayan region, and which has brought about not only environmental issues, but it has also brought in a lot of social and economic issues, displacement issues, and other forms of conflict. Now, coming further down, let's see, the Indian Himalaya has three very important basins. Out of 10 major river systems, three major rivers and the systems are there in the Indian Himalaya. The Indus River Basin is a very important river basin within the Indian Himalaya. It spans across four countries and covers approximately 9,30,000 square kilometer and supports 286 million people. And its hydropower potential has been worked at about 35,700 megawatt, whereas India's share in this figure is 34,000, which is a notable share. And in this basin, we have exploited about 35% of our hydro potential. This basin has a very high dependence on glacial and snow melt, and because of this dependence, Indus Basin is also very sensitive to various impacts of climate change, and that is what we are seeing at the moment. The Western Himalaya has been witnessing so much of extreme climatic events in the last 1 to 2 months, and there was a report from down to that almost about 550 people have already died in the Himalayan region, and the Himalayan states in the last 8 months have witnessed one disaster every day. That is what the data shows, which is little worrying. Coming to Ganga Basin, you know, Ganga Basin is another very important basin of the Indian Himalaya. It covers 10,86,000 square kilometer and again spans across four countries, and it supports over 600 million people. Its hydro potential has been estimated at 20,000, little over 20,000 megawatt in India, and in Nepal it has additional potential. And if you see the data by 2015, India had harnessed about 24% of this potential in India, and there were also several projects under construction. And this basin, Ganga Basin, relies heavily on monsoon rainfall, whereas Indus Basin relies on snow melt and glacier melt, and Ganga Basin basically depends on monsoon rainfall contributing, and glacier melt and snow melt contributes only about less than 10% of its stream flow. And reportedly, there are reports that says Ganga has the highest dam density in the country. There is one dam per 18 kilometer in the region. So this can be, Ayush can give his observation on this. This is what I found, and this raises serious concern. It has ecological concerns, it has geological concerns, it has human concerns, which we need to discuss. Coming to Brahmaputra Basin, one of the most important basins in the Indian Himalaya, Brahmaputra Basin, it covers 5,80,000 square kilometer across four countries, and it has the highest hydropower potential in the country, and its hydropower potential has been broadly calculated around 66,000 to 68,000 megawatt, of which less than 10%, in fact, less than 5% has been harnessed so far. And this is why you see in the last 15 to 20 years, if you see the approach of the government of India, they have turned towards the east, and they really want to harness the hydropower potential of the Eastern Himalaya. It is so because it is very, very rich in hydro potential. And within The northeastern part of the country, Arunachal Pradesh alone accounts for 35% of India's total hydropower potential. And it is also important to understand that Brahmaputra basin has a very high sediment load. It is driven by very high rainfall. The region, the northeast, receives upward of 2,500 millimeter of water every year. And also this region sees Himalayan erosion. And there are also issues of, dams longevity because of so much of erosion and denudation. And this basin contributes, and snow and glacier contributes about 27% of the total annual runoff in the basin, and monsoon also plays a very, very important role during monsoon in its total water volume. Now, it is also very important for us to record here that Northeast India has been dubbed as India's future powerhouse, with 40% of the country's hydropower potential. And as early as in 2003, the new Electricity Act of the country has very specifically talked about this, and the government of India really wants to explore this 40% hydro potential of Northeast India, and it has termed the region as a future powerhouse, and it wants Northeast to play a very, very important role in the energy security of not only of India, but the entire South Asia. But the problem is most of the projects that has been initiated in the region has faced with opposition. And this is so because of many environmental impacts that we have seen in the region, and also because of transboundary concerns with Bangladesh and the lower riparian states like Assam, and there are also seismic risks. Whereas if you see the western part of the Himalaya, we do not have that kind of conflict, that kind of protest as compared to northeastern part of the country. The other important problem is China's upstream dam construction also adds to geopolitical complexities of the area and its downstream impact. All these things have been debated. Some scholars say there will be a large scale and very dangerous impact on the India and Bangladesh. But there are also scholars who say, it needs to be debated. It is not as it is seen on the face value. It may not have that kind of effect. And the debate is on, and it is on. The other thing is that the dams in northeastern part on the northeastern Himalaya has been proposed and propagated as run-of-the-river projects, and that is how these dams were pushed initially, and it was told to the people that it will mitigate the sediment issues, because since it is a run-of-the-river projects, but all these large dams, these mega dams, have in fact, in reality, on the field, they have exacerbated the ecological and social challenges that were already there in the region. Now, coming further down to hydropower dams and flood. When we have already talked about the potential. Himalaya has a lot of hydro potential, but Himalaya is also very young geologically and geomorphologically, and therefore it witnesses a lot of seismic activities. Geomorphic processes are very active, and climate change further is bringing in other sets of problems. And therefore, when we talk about hydropower development in the region, we really need to be very, very cautious. And hydropower development ventures has often either triggered or worsened flood disaster in the region because it is geologically unstable and climate change are further intensifying these risks. It is also that hydropower projects have, especially the big dams, they have disrupted fragile ecosystems downstream. It has increased landslide risks. It has also amplified flood impacts, and they have also altered river flows and sediment dynamics of the area and downstream. In the eastern Himalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, which has the largest hydro potential, actually faces a lot of problems. There are many problems, there are many projects, but because of the paucity of time, we may not be able to discuss that. But let me bring this very important project, Lower Subansiri Hydropower project. It is a 200 megawatt project, and this project has sparked a lot of concerns over downstream flooding and its ecological damage, with a lot of protests, a number of protests highlighting risks to the local communities and its biodiversity. There was a flood in 2021, which was linked to very high rainfall and faulty dam operations, and which devastated parts of Assam and displaced many people. Closer home, if you see in Sikkim in 2023, there was a glacial lake outburst flood. There was a lake called South Lonak Lake. This lake was one of the potentially dangerous lake, and it was identified as early as in 2011. Scientists and activists, they had been warning the government, this is the lake that could outburst anytime. And after so much of warning, in 2017, even our Sonam Wangchuk from Ladakh, he went there, tried to fix this through various scientific means, but things did not work. And when this glacial lake outburst flood happened on the third evening of October 2023, it is so sad to share with you all that there was not even a proper early warning system installed in the lake. So as a result, this glacial lake flood happened, and there was no early warning system. A large amount of water, several trillion liters of water, came down and destroyed the Chungthang Dam, the biggest dam in Sikkim, and killed almost 176 people altogether. A lot of people were missing. So altogether, it comes to around 200. So this disaster highlighted the vulnerability of the hydropower infrastructure to, more recent environmental challenges, newer environmental issues like climate-induced, floods and melting of glaciers, which increase glacial flood risks. And to make the situation work, this dam was not only unsustainable, it was also featured in and around the area. There was a huge deforestation. And if you go little downstream, there was human encroachment along the riverbeds. There was encroachment along the banks, and there was obstruction of the river's natural flow. These all human activities further heightened the flood, and it eventually turned this hazard into a disaster. So therefore, there is a very important saying, this UN, what we call this UNDRR, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, has very recently come up with this term, there is nothing natural about disasters. So if you see, all this floods actually is not a disaster, it's a hazard. Landslide is not a disaster, it's a hazard. But, because of our own human activities, natural processes are already there. We cannot do anything about them. They are there. That is the inherent character of the Himalaya. But human activity have, triggered these and worsened these processes so much that all these hazards have been turned into disaster because of human activity, and therefore they are largely human made. Now, this is the question I think we should put. Himalaya is already overburdened by geomorphic and geologic complexities. Now, human activities have further overburdened the humans. So, is the Himalaya overburdened by the humans? Has its carrying capacity reached? Is it? Have we overshooted its carrying capacity? I think this is a very important question that we need to ask. And if you see, it is increasingly burdened, as we have already seen. Infrastructure bases constructed on the riverside. Severe geomorphic responses are being seen, including flash floods, river end floods, landslides. This spans from western to eastern part of the Himalaya. Climate change has further worsened these dynamic processes, and their frequency and magnitude has increased over the period of time. So I think it's very important for us that these phenomena, we have serve as a very clear indicators of the Himalayan intolerance to the anthropogenic pressures. I think Himalaya has been telling us that no, it is not liking what we are doing. So I think it is very important and it is imperative for us to acknowledge and respond to these environmental signals and mitigate further ecological disruption. And this is the data of the last more than 100 years. See how Himalaya has been burdened by disasters. You see the figures of 1903 to 12, and you come to 2013 to 2022. In the last 10-15 years, out of the total disasters that India has witnessed, 40% has occurred in the Himalayas. So this figure possibly also tallies with the development activities that we have been doing in the Himalaya. So I think it is very important for us to acknowledge that Himalaya definitely is overburdened, and we have overshot the carrying capacity of the Himalaya. So all these activities of the human, the way we have been treating the Himalaya. Let's put if we put this into a perspective, there is a concept called determinism in human geography. This particular framework talks about how nature limits our choices, how nature shapes us. It says that whatever we do, we adjust with the environment. So this determinism possibly is not true with humans at the moment, but this is still true with non-humans, or what we these days call more than humans. So non-humans basically still operate within the framework of determinism. But in case of humans, we have long lived this deterministic framework. We have adopted this possibilistic framework. So possibilism says human innovates. Through innovation, human conquers natural limits. So through technology and science, we force nature to adjust to our demands, to our aspirations. And this is how all these developments have taken place within this framework. And there is now a new concept called neo-determinism. Now, this concept says, yes, choices are there. We can innovate, but even with innovations, we really have to be bounded by the natural laws. At from a certain limit, nature will not allow to bend natural rules. So I think we really have to understand these frameworks and see whether we are bounded by natural laws, whether we are really trying trying to adjust in the framework of neo-determinism. So let me play this video. This is the Tista 3 dam at Chungthang. So this is the reservoir area. You will see the dam. So this is a very important example of possibilism through innovations. See how downstream is drying up. We have changed and adjusted the nature. Then you'll see this. See, so very good, very important example of possibilism. This is a settlement in Chungthang. This is a dam, and we have changed the geomorphology of the area. And then you'll say this. This is how nature has, this neo-determinism has again taken place. It allowed us to change, but since we tried to change so much that nature could not tolerate, and therefore neo-determinism has taken place. Similarly, look at this. These are all the alluvial fans of the river. See how we have encroached it. Possibilism is there, but we have adjusted the environment so much that nature could not tolerate, and this is a very clear example of neo-determinism. It has reclaimed its space, and this is what nature does. You see, this is possibilism. See how we have encroached on the river beds, and this valley can anytime be washed out. This is Tista Valley, a very good example of possibilism. Look at this. This is Gangtok, amazing view of Gangtok, but anything can happen. Similarly, look at the settlement. This is virtually on the riverbed. So they can anyway anytime be reclaimed by the river. Look at this. This is Nathula. This is located at 4,300 meters above the sea level. And you can imagine this is a catchment area, and so much of traffic there. So this is a possibilism, but it can anytime turn into neo-determinism and can be reclaimed by nature. It's just look at this. This is a Beni Bazaar in Nepal. The settlements. This town has practically occupied all the riverbed area. You see this. This is Tista 5 dam, 40 kilometers below the Chungthang dam that collapsed. So this is Tista 5 dam, and this is what happened after 2023 disaster. It could withstood the flood, but it was very badly damaged. So I think the bottom line is, I'll end here because we don't have time to talk into the various measures that we need to take. That will take another lecture. The bottom line is we cannot afford to work against the nature. So there is a possibilism is there, but that does not mean, you keep on adjusting environment towards more fragile and towards more marginal locations. So therefore, what we need to do is we ought to work and live in partnership with nature. We really need to respect this neo-determinism framework of, and to look into where is the balance. We really need science. In order to understand where the balance lies, we really need science and scientific data, and there lies the problem. Most of our policymakers, all these big dams are designed by the engineers. We do not have scientists and policymakers and bureaucrats. It's very sad to observe here and record here that they don't take scientists seriously. They don't take scientific findings seriously. Let me give a very clear example here. In Tista Basin, there are 5-volume carrying capacity reports which were worked out in the late 80s and 90s. And that carrying capacity report very clearly says how to go about, how to construct dams, and from which point upwards we should not construct dams. But those reports were not taken seriously. And even after Chungthang, there were 2 more dams that were actually designed, but they were all opposed by the locals and they were scrapped. So I think we really need to take science seriously. We need to have scientific data, and we also have to respect people's science, what we call traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and these days we call them people's science. So I think these 2 knowledge bases have to be very seriously taken into consideration when we talk about these disasters, these big structures. And I think then only we can think of balancing development and disaster. So I think from here onwards, we need to talk about how to go about, especially in the context of disaster risk reduction. But because of paucity of time, I'm just stopping here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vimal, for the wonderful presentation and giving an overview. I could relate to so many things, but last line I just want to stress upon what are these reports doing. But I think we can also bring here G.D. Agarwalji's work on Ganga. I mean, Sanandji, so much of work. Ayush also knows about it. But we'll come to that, and we have to keep moving. And we have to also keep discussing. I will encourage all the participants to post their questions and comments in the chat box or raise their digital hand. And meanwhile, let me take the honor to invite our discussant for the day. First discussant, Dr. Rinan Shah, who is a postdoctoral fellow with the Center for Excellence for Himalayan Studies, Shiv Nadar Institute of Eminence. Vimal, may I request you to please close your presentation?
Yeah, that is what I'm doing.
Yeah. So Rinan is an interdisciplinary researcher with 10 years of experience in environment, development, and sustainability studies. She studies water, mountains, governance, policy, institutions, and urban issues with a rights-based approach. She has published commentaries, policy analysis reports, and popular articles. And she's also the co-founder of Reading Himalaya, a research and policy consultancy. She was a postdoctoral fellow at the Harvard University with Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute. And she received her PhD from Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment, what we know as ATRE. And she's an incoming Marie Curie Action Fellow at Queen's Mary University of London. So first of all, thank you so much, Rinan, to join us as a discussant, and also many congratulations that you have cracked Marie Curie Fellowship. I'm super excited to see you there. And importantly, welcome back to W4W's platform. And it's always good to have you here. You have to pose some questions, difficult questions, not only to Vimal, but also to all of us around here, and you know the region very well. Welcome, Rinan, and over to you.
Thank you, Mansi, for reaching back, reaching out to me, and making space for my discussions. As you already know, the kind of work I do is mostly looking at how the institution's governance around issues of water happen. My focus has been drinking water, but I also touch upon aspects of infrastructure, and infrastructure and its impacts is where hydropower also comes in. So in my short discussion, I'll just reflect upon, I would like to say, my life history of interactions with hydropower projects and their auxiliary infrastructure, because it's not just the project, it's also the little things that come with, little or big things that come with it. Also looking at impacts of hydropowers, but also impacts on hydropowers itself because of, say, climate change, extreme events, and uncertainty. And also posing a question, larger question on governance, because we have a governance structure that disables the flow of information and accountability of large infrastructure, because you don't know whom to go to ask questions, especially from the community's perspective. I would like to begin by saying when you're in the mountains, you are always a stone's throw away from any kind of hydropower infrastructure. I come from Bijanbari, which is a basin within the basin of the Brahmaputra, because it's a Tista basin, and within Tista basin, it is the Chota Rangit. Chota Rangit flows through the town that I come from. So right behind me in Chota Rangit, there is another small tributary called Ramam, and on Ramam, there is the hydropower project, which is a run of the river project, right? And every monsoon, you have these, now with the internet, you have videos on Facebook coming out of, some pipeline bursting. The names that you hear are very international in one way, because there was once a pipeline that burst that belonged to Nippon. Okay, and we don't imagine the kind of interference that happened. And within in Bijanbari itself, we have a powerhouse that is where many of us used to go play picnic, because it's also a run of the river system, and they will lift up the bottom surface and show that the river is flowing through. And on the tea plantations, you see these massive electric transmission wires that are taking, in a way, very figuratively, also taking the power and benefits away from the mountains to we don't know where. Most cases, we don't know where they go to. So, in a sense, we are also left wondering who is getting all this power, quote unquote power, right? And the benefits of the hydropower itself. Further, when we were younger, the Tista was much more vibrant, much more flowing. But now, instead of joyous kind of feelings, when you see the Tista, it's more, it's a very scary kind of feeling, because it is very stagnant, and that stagnant water also has the capacity of eating away and eroding, because it is standstill for such a long time. And hydropower, never leaves the kind of narratives for the communities that exist there, because as recent as 2023, the same year when the Chungthang collapse happened, an 18-watt megawatt project was proposed on the Little Rangit or Chota Rangit. And what people say is it's also about how the projects are coming in, because there are different attempts to bring the project back. They said, reminiscing that, oh, this project had come like 7 or 8 years ago by the plantation people. They wanted to put the project when it had been blocked. Then again, it came repackaged as something else. However, what I would again like to point out is, uh, about the lack of information and the flow of information, because in a way, the communities are unable to, voice their concerns, which is very important, as Vimal sir already mentioned, that they have been living there for much, much, much longer. And a lot of people do talk about it, especially in the case of Chungthang disaster also. It's not that the communities had not warned the people who had come in, they had flagged it at different times. But and also studies have shown that how local infrastructure knowledge, of course, the traditional knowledge, but also disaster preparedness is much quicker than what is imposed from top down. So in a way, by the time your emergency relief comes in, which is from the government, the local communities are already, coping with it, whatever comes in. So in a way, we have to keep the, methods of conversation open, where we can include respect the different forms of knowledge, as we just saw about, what are the different forms of knowledge that is coming in. And if yeah, and and include it in your policy that in a way it does not negate it, because a lot of things your climate science, climate modeling, forecast, weather forecast can't do. And probably that is also an acceptance that has to come from the different experts, that you can't downscale a climate model at, say, a household level, right? So you have to figure out ways to do it. Anyway, should I ask the questions right away, or should
Yes,
I come
please.
back again?
You may pose some questions, and then let me just get Ayush in. After, I think then both of you can take questions turn by turn, so that it becomes,
Okay.
you're all a part of the discussion then. So we have our second discussant, Ayush Joshi. Ayush Joshi is a spiritual seeker and an environmental technologist from Uttarakhand, Himalayas. I met him at Matri Sadan, to be honest, when we talk about Sananji or G.D. Agarwal, sir. So he is a conservationist, and he works as and his life is associated with Ganga Ahwan, where he participated in raising awareness against unscientific construction in the upper reaches of Uttarakhand, exactly what she was just talking about and Vimal presented. And after a career of long corporate engineering, actually he has rejoined his associate and is pursuing scientific approach to problem solving. His work includes projects on landslides, impact studies, and eco-sensitive zones with the Ministry of Earth Sciences, as well as infrastructure assessment with World Bank Inspection Panel and other scientific assessments. He's a passionate environmentalist and avid traveler. And his works also, where I actually came to know about him, on waste management in the Ganga Himalayan Basin, because anthropogenic activities, as was presented by Vimal. He has founded Ideal Foundation, and he is working through there. And I'm going to keep it short here and invite Ayush to give his opening remarks, and then we can open the floor to all questions and answers, not only from both of you, but also if there are any questions and comments from any participants, you may put it in the chat box or raise your digital hand. Ayush, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mansee. I'm really thankful to Professor Khawas, Dr. Renan. I think you pointed out most of what I wanted to convey. To bring your larger set of focus from the entire the Himalayan Basin to the Ganga Himalayan Basin, I would quickly take up 2 minutes to show you a slide of this is something which we shared with a lot of people all across the country, the decision makers of our country, and including the PMO, the CMO, and a lot of other important decision makers of this country. So here you see this picture, this map contains the entirety of Uttarakhand as a whole, the entire state. This red line, if you see very closely, this is the main central thrust. Main central thrust is, for people who do not know, is a line, a thin line, which connects the Eurasian plate to the Tibetan plate. This is where most of the tectonic shifts happen. And if you look at it, all the tags and all the labels that we have done here, all these triangles represents all the Char Dham area, the Char Dham that we have in the Garhwal Himalayas. If you draw a circle at the center, these are on a 50-kilometer aerial radius from each other. All the heavy anthropogenic activities are happening in this region. All the dams that you see in yellow are the proposed hydropower projects. All the dams that you see in red are existing hydropower projects. And all the dams that you see in the green are the projects that are under construction.
Okay.
Now, just to give you a little background on the geology of this region, anything that is above the MCT is considered moraines, paraglacial sediments. So if you go in the glacial past, you would know that these were regions filled with glaciers at one point of time in the past. Why I'm saying this is to make you understand that these are the regions from where the retreat of the glacier has happened. So when the retreat of the glacier happens, the water goes down in the form of river, and what you're left with is loose debris. When you are left with loose debris, you cannot in principally develop anything in these regions. And we are thinking, I mean, if you look at these pictures, this is where most of the tourism that is happening in this state. This is where every year more than 30, 40 lakh, 50 lakh tourists comes in every year. These are the regions where all these helicopter yatras are happening. These are the regions where most of the dams are getting constructed. Okay. Imagine a scenario, we are at war, because these are the regions which connects with China. These are the regions which connects with Tibet. Yeah. We will have a scenario which we cannot explain and we cannot understand. This green patch, if you see, this is the only patch where these 4 dams were taken back, where these 4 dams were cancelled. Imagine, this is the Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone, this entire green patch. So Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone was declared after the cancellation of Lohari Nagpala Dam in 2010 by the center. And after cancellation of these dams, we had to face a lot of backlash from all the people benefiting out of these dams. Imagine today, we all saw what happened in Dharali. Imagine the similar would have happened and all these 4 dams would have been there. The impact would wash out the entire Uttarkashi. And this is something that was already told in 2023 that this exactly about to happen by Dr. Naveen Juyal and Dr. Himandhyani, who were part of the hydropower, the high-powered committee constructed by the Supreme Court in 2018. Now, if you look at the next slide, this is the solution that we have been trying to propose to the center and to the state for almost a decade now. That this particular zone is also one of the zones that not just only cancelled the dams, but if you look at eco-sensitive zone, it's basically in a way, in a layman's perspective, divides all the developmental activities in 3 zones. One is prohibited zone, one is regulated zone, and one is the permitted zone. When I say zone means all the activities, basically the categories. Now imagine if this would have been the case in the entire Gange-Himalayan basin. All sorts of activities which are going to be devastating in the future, because now we have all the data sets, now we have all the science which is saying the otherwise. We all saw Professor Kawas must know also. I'll come down to the questions later on. But what happened in 2021, the Rishi Ganga project? What happened in 2023 in the Joshimath disaster? We have seen anything that is happening around here it's not natural. It has been aggravated by the wrong concepts and the wrong engineering, the wrong methods that we have chosen to develop in these regions. I'm going to let it sink in, and maybe we can go on to questions, and I'll just stop here.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ayush. And you reminded me of a very important session. We actually happened last year at W4W when we had Dr. Naveen Juyal and Ravi Chopra ji talk about very similar things. And it came out very clear that we have to find some kind of balance between what nature can take and what we can do, as rightly mentioned by a theoretical approach from Vimal. I think I'll open the floor for everyone, but of course, Rinan and Ayush, you have your first say to pose your questions, not only to Vimal, as I mentioned, but to all of us. But of course, Vimal has to take responsibility to answer both of you. Over to you, Rinan. And Vimal, if you may, yes, your face was cutting. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rinan.
I think, mostly I would want to know, in your experience, since you've been engaging with it, and how involved are the communities in the process of determining if hydropower systems can come in their background or not? And do you think it ever will happen in the future?
Good. You asked my question also. Thank you. Vimal, how participatory are the planning and development and design of the hydropower projects?
That is the crux of the problem, and we all know how it works. On paper, it's all there. If I have my experience in the Tista Basin, I don't have the experience of other basins, but it works the same way. Environmental impact assessment was done. It was basically it is done by the universities or IITs. In our case, it was initially IIT Kharagpur was approached, but because of the huge amount of honorarium they demanded, it went to North Bengal University, Department of Geography and Applied Geography. That is how environmental impact assessment, social impact, everything was done on paper. And even the communities were, taken into consideration. There were a lot of hearings here and there. If you hear the activists like, no, Himanshu Upadhyay, he was there. He was one of the very, very prominent activists at that point of time opposing the dams. And there is an NGO called Nespon in Siliguri. They also raised the issue. But somehow all these participations were very, very nicely put on paper, but on the ground, it was just a picnic. That is what people say. It was a picnic kind of thing. People were brought from all the villages. They were said, yeah, a good thing is happening. Dam is coming up. There will be bridge. There will be roads. There will be hospitals. There will be primary schools. There will be scholarship. All these things to some extent has been given, but people were not told about what could happen in terms of ecological destruction. These things were never projected. And when these projects are proposed, they will say it is a run of the river project. The rivers water will not be impounded. Water will just flow through it. It will be just as natural as it used to be. This was what was told. And within the communities also there were contractors, opportunists were there. Somehow they indirectly supported. So this was how things happened, and eventually the core of the problems will never be told to the people. Only rosy things, only good things about employment they will say, about small scale contracts they will say. And people, what can people do? They're all, most of them are rural people. Urban and educated people are not there. So eventually, so very bluntly speaking, people have no idea about what happens with these hydropower projects, and that is how it works. So
Ayush,
no people
sorry.
were taken into consideration.
Sorry, Ayush, please take your first question and then we can move on to other questions. So we can go one each.
All right. So, Professor, since you mentioned the high sensitivity of these regions, and I would like to understand also about the carrying capacities. I'm glad to hear that there were some carrying capacity studies done and conducted in your region. But I'm
Yes.
pretty sure that carrying capacity studies, as far as we understand, or the administration always, when we get into arguments, they talk about the number of beds available in a certain area in the hotels. They do not understand the ecological or the geological carrying capacity. Would like you to give a point to point, maybe a very brief understanding of how carrying capacity, how deep it could be.
Carrying capacity is a little technical term, but for a layman like us, for general people, when we say
Yes.
carrying cap, it is basically, the pressure, the maximum pressure that I can handle, or the Himalaya can handle at the Himalayan level. How much pressure, human pressure or the environmental pressure, that the region can handle, can take the burden of. So beyond that, it will collapse. Similarly, this is true for me also at the individual level. How much I can handle. Beyond that, I will not be able to take, and I'll collapse. So this was what was done in the Tista Basin. It was, I think it was very early. It was in the late 80s or in the early 90s. This carrying capacity study was conducted by a very important research institute in Delhi. I forgot the institute's name. I think Professor Pandit was there, and other professors from our own regions were there. They came up with 5-volume reports. There are 5 volumes all and in different sectors. And environment, there is a solo report on which talks about only the environment and how infrastructure should what is the expected carrying capacity of the region, and how should we go about and that was the time when hydropower projects were not there. Only small scale projects were there, which were under the government of Sikkim. And there was only one project. Tista 5 was, I think it was under construction. Other projects were just being planned at that point of time. Government of India had just identified Northeast as a very important hydro source, and they were planning about 168 dams in Northeast India. And out of these 168 dams, I think about 41 were projected for Sikkim. And that was the time this carrying capacity report was prepared, and it had very clearly said, I think, upward of a certain particular point. I think it was much below Chungthang, that there should not be dams, because it is very geologically, geomorphologically, and ecological. It is very sensitive, and we should not go above that. And they had also, I think, they had also advised not to go for this cascading type of projects, because if one dam collapsed, then the water comes down, there will be a chain of impacts. I believe they had also advised not to go for this cascading type of projects. But, as I have already highlighted, bureaucrats, policymakers, they do not take scientific work seriously. They say they very clearly said, these are just gossips. You guys are gossip mongers. That is what they have said to me also. So these are all gossip. We have to, and they clearly they also said once, and hydro engineer said to me that, you guys are anti-dams. You work against us. They do not listen to the logic, and they do not take science seriously. They do not take data seriously. So what to do? So that is how, the carrying capacity report was totally neglected. So I think we really need to do this carrying capacity studies of other basins also, bigger basins.
Let me just interject here quickly, and I'm giving a summary from what you presented, because that itself for me is bringing me anxiety when you talked about India, so Himalayan basins potential of having 500,000 megawatt kind of power,
500
and
lakh.
With actually 60% load factor, which is approximately 60% load factor that India alone possesses. But then there was another interesting figure which you gave, and then I really got shivers, to be honest, that India has only harnessed 25%, 21% of its potential, and 69% remains untapped. And I'm just wondering, and you also mentioned that, imagine the kind of impacts we are having with only having 21%, and the challenges you already mentioned. But within that also, you were further talking about that Northeast has a potential of the overall Indian Himalayan basin about 40%, and Arunachal alone having 35%. I mean, it's already a factor for me as an anxiety. So even if we take science and the potential that shows in Himalayan basin, I'm really concerned. But we come back to it. Just to add what you were discussing right now in carrying capacity, Rinan, over to you. And we can get Naman also after you. Over to you, Rinan.
Okay, hi. So I think, not I think, in a sense, my first question is also about not for, I've because when we talk about burdening, right? Because we already know the mountains are marginalized. It's not that the people in the mountains have the best, human development indicators. So in a sense, they are the ones who are suffering irrespective, right? So when we talk about carrying capacity, when we talk about, human interventions, many of them are, mountain communities themselves. So how do you negotiate this whole idea of, quote unquote overpopulation, or, or talking about carrying capacity or anthropogenic impacts, because a lot of them have not are mountain residents themselves, right? So the burdens of it also fall on them. So in a way, it is, I mean, how do you negotiate this space? And secondly, when Mansee spoke about we are still not even 50% there with the potential, hydropower potential, it seems to be a very positive language, in which,
Yes,
similar
that's
in the way
scary also.
how they can also, yeah, also in a way how they say green energy. So it is like, I think Ayush has to go.
Yeah, no
Green
problem,
energy.
Ayush.
So
Thank you
the
so much
usage
to
of
be
this,
around.
yeah. So the usage of this very positive sounding, climate forward terminologies for something which has an impact on the mountain communities, and it gets harsher by the day. So I mean, it's also about how do you, I mean, there's no way out in some way. I mean, that's just scary.
Okay, Vimal. Difficult question, and also there's a question, interesting one, I think very much related
So it's very
in the
tough
chat
question,
box. Yeah,
very,
go
very
ahead.
tough questions.
Yes.
Mountain communities are already marginalized. Even
Mm,
without hydro, even
yes.
without developments, we are very marginal. I come from a
Almost
very
Northeast does not exist in the mind map of most of the mainland
I
Indians.
come from a village. Today I
Mm.
work in Jawaharlal Nehru University, but if you see my own trajectory, my village, I could drove my vehicle to my village only in 2014. That was for the first time. Before that, we used to walk. We had ropeway. We had no infrastructure. So we are already marginalized. And that was exactly the reason why majority of the people supported this TDLP, Tista Low Dam project, because NHPC very clearly said, if you allow us to construct this dam, we will construct a bridge for you. So that is
It's
how
like a development narrative.
that is how corporate also convinces you to their advantage. And they also, and they did, because NHPC, organizations like NHPC and NTPC, they are doing government's job. Government is not doing anything. Government of West Bengal is not doing anything. Government of India is not doing anything in the remote areas. NHPC said, if you allow us, we will construct it. And they have also constructed. Because of their construction only today I can drive my vehicle to my house. Otherwise, I have to walk for almost 14 kilometers. And they constructed schools, and my village was not electrified. I studied in Dhibri, what we call this, this traditional lamp. It was only NHPC constructed that TDL with that lights came in my village. So we are already marginalized without all this development. So because of that, these corporates, the agents of development will manipulate you. That is one thing, and that is how there is no question of negotiation. You have to agree to what they say, because they will give you so much of rosy pictures, and in the long term there will be so much of long ecological and other consequences. Our local climate has changed. People are saying, and new diseases have arrived. Our food habits have arrived, because when you construct these big projects, it will not only come with concrete, it will also bring a lot of people from the plains. They will come with their own new diseases. They will come with food habits. All criminal behaviors will come to the hills. So in a way, this marginalized community have further been marginalized with all these complex issues now. So I think it is a very, very difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I so much relate with what you are mentioning, and I'm sure Rinan also relates because she works right on the
Yeah. See,
ground with
see,
people.
we belong to
Yes.
the same, almost same
Yeah, and also
ecosystem.
we have this additional layer of problem in the mainland country, where as the mainland part of the country where Northeast is already in total marginalized, and then there is Himalayan region further marginalized. And I personally feel there is an extra burden of the mainland flatland people having these big ideas and imposing on the hilly areas people. And I think it's a very complex thing, but yes, education in those areas, whether they are part of the, I think Rinan and me, we both are more concerned how participatory are these important decisions happening and the impact. But yes, we do understand that it brings certain things, but it is also about Primal then the short-term benefits and the long-term costs, and probably as layperson communities, some people definitely in the communities can look um, uh, through the long-term impacts and all, but there are people who would like to also focus on the immediate needs. If children don't get educated,
Exactly.
how can they even have their voice? And these are the trade-offs we all have to really look at at every point in large scale decision making. There is a question from Ayush, our second discussant. He had to leave because of his father's some health issues. So I will talk to him later, but we can take his question. At one point of time, there were 400 HEB planned in Uttarakhand alone. Half of them were run out of river projects. How devastating.
400.
Same issue as we are talking about the potential. And let me just invite Naman to unmute and maybe engage, because we have been always appreciating our participants really online, but humanly engaging with us. So Naman, would you like to unmute yourself and engage? And I see some well-known names to me. I will be very happy to encourage you to unmute and engage with us. Naman.
Hello everyone.
Hi,
Good evening.
Good evening.
So this was my question that I asked in the chat box, that
Yes.
because I also come from the mountains here in the lower Himalaya region of Uttarakhand, and I've seen these projects grow in front of me, like Tiri Dam project and other smaller projects near Uttakashi. So all I see is, most of the time, this is the new narrative that government has played in by, like, for example, the Char Dham road. The Char Dham Yatra was divided in such packets that no EIA was considered important.
Yes.
So my question is, do we as a citizen or as the intelligentsia, we need to question these projects on a regular basis so that we find the authenticity in their reports, or how do normal ordinary citizen has how should they develop this agency among themselves, that they can question these authorities in some ways or the other? Because I sometimes feel most of these projects are just passed on in a very secretive environment and without much discussions.
Which
So
project?
sorry,
Which projects you are talking about? Hydro or this?
I'm talking about big projects that includes dam projects, and as well as the with the 4-lane highway project in
Yeah.
Uttarakhand as well, because that has also been in question for some time now. So
And also protested.
yes,
Heavily protested.
yes. So my question is basically, how does a person find that agency, or develop that kind of agency where they can ask questions, or they can go to the governments with their insights, and at the same time keep them in the loop, because most of the time government feels they're untouchables in ways that one a person cannot reach them, and people cannot question them. So is there a way we can find some agency as normal citizens to talk
Okay,
about
that's a
these?
very interesting question, Naman, and especially at a time when EIA has almost become toothless, and we have not moved to the strategic environment assessment that is carried out by World Bank. Over to you, Vimal. And I see Rinan would also like to contribute.
I think, given the governance framework we have at the moment, on paper we do have what we call this decentralized planning framework. We have 73rd Amendment Acts, we have 74th Amendment Acts that talks about decentralized governance, decentralized planning. It talks about, people's participation. That is everywhere on paper, but in practice, I know that, we don't have that kind of scope. They don't even, include, most of the academics are also outside the scope of most of these projects. So I don't think, at the moment, with this kind of governance framework and the way, things work at the bureaucratic level, we have a very little scope to actually contribute and question the decisions. Whatever uh, protest that has been happening, in if you see in Sikkim, when this 41 dams were proposed in Sikkim,
Yes.
particularly in the northern part of Sikkim, there was a big movement, or what we call this ACT, Affected Citizen of Tista. They came up with a big movement, especially this was led by the lecturers of Sikkim, and they were on hunger strike for almost 1 year. And the result was some of the dams were scrapped, especially in the Jongu area. But in the northern part of Sikkim, especially in the Lachung and Lacheng area, you know, there is no governance. They have a what we Zumsa system. The government of Sikkim does not operate there. So there was conflict. Like some of the members of the Zumsa, they supported the dam. That is how this Chungthang Dam came into the picture. Chungthang, there were two more dams upward of Chungthang. Those two dams were scrapped because of the protest and on the spiritual conflict there. But Chungthang somehow was also opposed initially, but from within the community, there were some strong individuals who actually supported this dam. That is so. But if you, in Jongbu area, at least around six dams were scrapped because of this protest by the Lepchas. So I think yes, if you are on the field, if you aggressively protest, there are cases when government have heeded to the concerns to some extent. But below that, in the downstream areas, there was so much of protest in Darjeeling Hills area also. None of the protests were taken into consideration. So I think it's all the decision. Once the decision is taken at the policy level, at the bureaucratic level, turning out the decision is very, very difficult. And once the decision is taken and they create the reports as per the decisions, the environmental impact assessments, which talks about participation, they are all manipulated once the decision is taken. So that is how it works. So I think it's very, very difficult, and it is, if I don't say impossible, but the framework is such that in India that it's very, very difficult to push our voice and compel them to hear our voice.
Especially in the macro projects like
Right.
this, I
It's
suppose.
very
Yes.
difficult. You can see Narmada Bataw Andolan. There was such
Vedatai.
a international level movement, and see Narmada was eventually it was constructed. The project was on.
I think, looking at Jal Satyagraha, what I call as protest as Jal Satyagraha, for any democracy to function, having an alternate view is extremely important, and protest is part of that alternate view. But when you mentioned that 6 projects were scrapped, that is also an optimistic way of looking at it. At least the alternate views were taken
Right,
into consideration.
That is
So we have to take
that
it
is
in
how
that
this ACT
note.
became quite famous. Yeah.
Yes, that is how it is
That's
important
true.
that we have to make our point. Maybe some points were overlooked. Rinan,
Right.
would you like to have some words here, and then we will start closing the session, because I don't see any more questions or digital hands raised. This is also the last time I would like to ask all our participants, if you have any question or comment, you may chip in. And Rinan, over to you.
Yeah, in a way, what also has happened in the projects that I looked at, because I looked at small infrastructural projects, the flow of funds and how it
Yes.
is coming or not. In some cases when projects have been completed, today people can't figure out where they are, because you don't know,
Yes.
like when they construct tanks, in Darjeeling town they have constructed a few water tanks, but nobody is able to figure out. So in a way, what is also happening is, retrospectively also, a lot of files you can't find, like if you want to look for
So
DPRs,
information
DPRs which are
flows.
supposed to yeah, DPRs which are supposed to be put online by the government, once the project is in process, you can't find. And interestingly, in the West Bengal websites, is like you will have every district, but Darjeeling is missing. So in a
Yes.
sense,
Yeah.
you
It
can't
has
find.
additional
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
With administrative problem with West Bengal and
yeah.
Sikkim governance.
Yeah, and probably one way, one thing that has probably happened in Darjeeling and Sikkim area is because of this, unwillingness of the government, unwillingness of the state, as we may call it. But there are very strong community organizations, which are at the community level, which sometimes which are kind of vigilantes, but not like at the extreme level, but they do, keep a lookout. Sometimes, of course, vigilantes can become extreme, turning into Khap Panchayat types. But also you have vigilantes which also look at what concerns, what are coming up. So there are lots of community-based organizations, I felt, which might have emerged because of the unwillingness of the state. Because the state doesn't care, so communities have come together, and they're coming together for generic stuff, right? Like healthcare, or funerals or marriages have also moved on to larger concerns of, say, water, or for example, as I mentioned about the Save the River campaign, or local, what do we say, cleanliness campaign. So I in a way, there is hope when the communities have some kind of awareness, but the awareness also usually comes from only one person or two who's able to get the information and share it, because nobody is getting the information out of out of general broadcasting of information, because there isn't any. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that is my
Yeah.
thought.
Okay. I think it's also time for us to start closing the session. But before I close, first of all, I would like to announce how interesting these sessions happen. So we would like to announce the next session, which is on Wednesdays for Water on September 10th, where we actually talk about community water management in Odisha. As you know, Odisha really stands out in terms of water management happens through community. We have some wonderful speakers just like today. The information will be there on our website, www.W4W.in. This week, we have Friday Water Thesis Club, and we have a PhD scholar coming from SPA Bhopal and talking about, which is on September 5th at 5 p.m. Teachers Day. So we are learning from students as teachers, and that's the best way. Water as Jeevan Dhara and Daivam. So she's working on water heritage, and she's going to present her work. Afreen is there, and we are looking forward to that presentation on September 5th. We are also actually preparing for our annual event, which is Water Festival on September 26th and 27th at Ahmedabad University, and it is co-hosted by Ahmedabad University's Foundation Program on Water. So super excited. If you would like to join us, do write to us at hello.w4w@gmail.com and keep checking our website. All these sessions are open access to everyone, because at W4W, we strongly believe that we have to keep the conversation flowing, as I mentioned in the beginning, and we have to really make water education to make sure that water is everybody's business, and not in the silos and those few people sitting in comfortable rooms and talking about water and imposing some ideas on them. I had a very important question on with Vimal, but I think I'll take it outside and we can keep discussing, because often that happens. Who are these people who are making these important decisions on behalf of the mass? Are they part of those mass for whom they make? And as rightly mentioned by Rinan in the beginning, who are actually those beneficiaries in the upfront when these large projects are made? We are going to run a series, so these questions can come up and again, because when we run a series, it is at least 10 to 12 sessions. So hoping for running those series. If you work in water sector, if you are interested, if you are concerned, do write to us. We are very happy to receive our speakers here, and looking forward to having more sessions with you. Let us make water everybody's business by conversation. Thanks a lot, Vimal, for taking out time and also
Thank you
making
so much,
this wonderful
Mansee ma'am.
presentation. Thanks, Rinan, and congratulations again. And I will also extend my thanks to Ayusha outside this session. Thanks, everyone, all the participants here. Do join us next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.